We're going to record and kick this off as the first compensation and benefits peg for Fort Worth HR of 2023. My name is Doris Frenchard. Some of you may formerly know me as the Legal Shield lady. I used to do Legal Shield only, but I expanded my business. And now we are focusing on small companies with 10 to 50 employees, and we help them with all of their benefit choices. And we're big on education as well. And I get the pleasure of co-hosting this with Susan Snipes. She and I worked together in an account years ago that was offering Legal Shield, but we got this sister from another Mr. Bond, and we have remained friends ever since. I think it's been like 5 or 6 years, and I was so excited when I was by myself and she was like, yes, I'll help co-host. She is an amazing consultant. She was so amazing. She's like, I'm gonna go out and do this thing on my own, and started her own consulting firm. And she's gonna talk to us today about pay equity and transparency. Got some more people coming in. So if you guys could, we love your beautiful faces, but we want to record this, so we don't want any lagging or staggering, whatever the technical word is. So if you don't mind turning your video off for now, but we do assure you that Susan has padded Q&A in on the back end so that we will come all back and we get to interact. And we're going to interact actually throughout the presentation. She told me it's very interactive. So don't go get lunch, don't go walk away, don't go check email just because your camera's off, because she's got some hot information for you for 2023. Without further ado, I will get out of your way, Susan. That might have been a very long introduction.
Thank you.
But
that was
this
very
floor
nice.
is yours, my friend.
Thank you, Doris. Okay, welcome. So today we're going to be discussing pay equity and pay transparency. Some of the best practices. We will first cover a few topics here. I've got to start with my obligatory sort of disclaimer here. I'm not a lawyer. I don't even play one on TV, but I did stay at an HRN Express last night. All right, so the agenda, this is supposed to show me here in the camera. For some reason, it's not doing that. Our agenda today, we are going to define pay transparency and pay equity, discuss industry trends, some high-level review of state laws and really localities, because it's not just the states, it's local, and explain some of the best practices for designing your policies. One of the things I wanted to point out just sort of early on in this presentation is that if you go to the Department of Labor's website, they have what you would think would be a very helpful tool, a map of which states have their own equal pay laws and which states have pay transparency laws. And you would think it would be, but you might be wrong because they haven't updated it since 2021. So they are not staying on top of it. We're going to cover some of the states where, from 2022 and 2023 that have added some of these requirements. Okay, so to start off, I will just see what brainiacs we have in the audience here who would like to explain for us the difference between a pay equity law and a pay transparency law. Do we have a volunteer? At least one volunteer. Feel free to just unmute yourself and jump right in. No takers? Okay.
So does it have something to do with excuse me, disclosing prior salary versus sharing salary ranges on job postings?
Yeah, so basically the pay transparency has to do with giving people visibility into what different positions are paid. And, in some cases, the benefits that you're offering to that position, including commission and bonuses, depending on the location. So it's designed to, they're both pay equity and pay transparency laws are in place to promote fairness and to prevent discrimination. The thought process being that men and women have, historically, there's been a bit of a wage gap there. The whole 75 cents on the dollar, I think it's closer to 80 cents on the dollar now, but still a wage gap. And so the idea is that if you're paying everyone above board, then why not share that information? And pay equity is focused on making sure that people are actually paid equally for either the same work or similar work. And different states define what's similar differently, which we'll go into. But yes, absolutely. The pay transparency is talking about on job boards, internally. So thank you. That was a good shout there. I wish I could see you guys. I'm wondering if I can change the view here so I can see everybody off to the.
Yeah, Susan, I was going to say that we see both the presentation slide and the next slide that's coming up.
Oh, well, that's not what I want.
I didn't think so.
Well, thank you. Let me fix it. So maybe what I want is to share my PowerPoint only. What does that do for us if I share the?
Yeah, now make it full screen.
Okay, it is maybe showing up on the wrong screen. Okay, well. Let's see.
I mean, that was fine. It was bigger than the previous view.
Okay, for some reason it is putting it on my second screen, so I don't know if there's a way I can fix that. I promise I'm not usually technologically challenged. I'm just having a moment here, but I will fix this. I will try to fix this. So I think there's a way just to share the presentation and not my screen.
When you go to share, there's some usually different windows. It's usually share screen or share in a particular app. And it's your PowerPoint app.
Yeah, I tried that.
So that's all I got for you.
Okay.
But that second view was bigger. So I think if you just stuck with that, that would suffice. Oh, there you have it.
The only problem is it's not showing the correct screen. But all right, we'll go back. Okay.
Okay.
So one of the things that we were going to cover here are some of the states that have these pay transparency, pay equity laws of their own on the books. Federally, there's the Equal Pay Act that has been around for a long time that is saying that if you're literally doing the exact same job, that you should be paid equally for that. Men and women should be paid equally for that. If there's no other, all other things being exactly equal, right? If you have the exact same education, if you have the exact same everything, apples to apples, should be paid the same. But there's a gajillion different reasons why people could claim that, oh, well, this is a little bit different. This position, it's more technical. It's more technical, and not give any more like explanation on that. So states came in and they made laws that are a little more targeted and stricter in the requirements. So instead of just saying, a lot of these states, instead of just saying it has to be exactly the same, these two people have to be exactly apples to apples, it can be the same job or a similarly situated job. So maybe someone is at the same level on the org chart, and the level of difficulty and complexity, types of tools they use there's overlap in other areas that might mean that they should be in the same general pay range. So kind of thinking about job families, you know, if you were to create your pay bands and you'd have your job families, you'd have groups of jobs that were paid similarly across the organization, but maybe they're not even in the same department. So that's one of the ways that it was tightened up a bit. There's a quote that I had sourced very last minute, but it's a good quote. And it's from an author on, which I can't even see who said the quote right now because I can't see my full PowerPoint presentation and it's cut off. But it was from a book that was covering the economy in general. And so, you know, being transparent, part of being transparent about your income, expenses, debts, all of that, and fostering trust and transparency with your employees. Pay is obviously a part of that, and how we compensate people. Employees are our biggest, and oftentimes are one of our biggest expenses, if not our biggest expenses. So it's important to be transparent about that. Publicly traded companies have to be pretty darn transparent about it as it is, but we have some pay rate range disclosure requirements that are, you know, when we're saying transparency, specifically employees that work in these locations here, these are the ones that are requiring that the either pay rate or pay range be disclosed. And it may be that it has to be disclosed on your job board, or it needs to be disclosed internally, for example, whenever you post a new position. And I have some specific examples of these. A couple of the areas where these laws can differ from state to state or location to work location is, you know, the number of employees an employer has to have for the requirements to cover you, the types of job listings that are covered, whether promotion, transfer, external, when you have to notify people. Is it when you give the offer? Is it upon request? Is it, you know, there's a wide range of things that might be necessary. I would like in the chat, see, I was going to be able to throw up some polls so that we could keep things anonymized. So that makes it a little more, I don't want to ask any questions about this that aren't anonymized because, you know, it's a touchy subject. But has anyone ever worked in the past, not for your current company, but has anyone ever worked for a company that had completely transparent pay? You could look and see what everybody made. Got to know. No. How about for certain, there's pretty much no across the board here. What about for certain types of positions? Like maybe all of the customer service reps, everybody could see the range on that and you knew what you had to do to get from point A to point B. Or maybe all of the developers, developer 1, developer 2, at the engineering firm, sometimes that happens. Okay, a lot of no's. How many of you guys are multi-state employers? So you guys are multi-state employers? Yes, yeah. So and when I say multi-state, we're including your remote folks. If you have remote employees, if you have 4 or more remote employees working in New York City, you now have this obligation handed to you to comply with the New York City requirements. Some full-time remote, in other states, only a handful. Yeah.
So I think that's an interesting distinction though, and I'm glad you said it. So it's 4 or more working in New York City, not that we have 4 or more.
Correct.
Employees. Okay.
Correct.
That's where some of this gets really, I go when I read new legislation has just been passed, my brain goes to, I have 50 questions. And
Yeah.
that's one that was just sort of floating. I mean, it makes sense logically, but that's really helpful. So thank you.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's definitely based on the work location. So like in Maryland, where it says all employers, it's all employers who do business in Maryland. And doing business in Maryland includes having remote workers in Maryland. So that's a for example. And I'm not going into every single location on this, but I'm just providing a few examples of for multi-state employers to get an idea of what some of the differences are, because these are the questions you have to ask yourself is, does it apply to us? Okay, if it does, then where do we have to be posting it? So in New York City, we have to post on all of our job advertisements. So if you are putting a job out there on the interwebs, you are posting, and you are saying that it is a remote position and you literally do not restrict where they could be working. They could be working out of New York. They could be working out of these different places. You need to post a pay range. Unless you're going to restrict it to work locations where there are no pay transparency laws in place, you need to advertise the pay range. I'm wondering how many of you guys in the chat, okay, it looks like Kelly has 60 employees remote all around the country. Yeah. So Kelly, you're probably familiar with having to come up with best practices that generally encompass most people and then managing the exceptions as they come. Now, who's of the opinion, I'm curious, because long before these laws were a thing, I still liked to publish the pay range on job postings because I didn't want people wasting my time if they were going to wait till the final round of the interview and then ask for more money. Like that just to me seemed like a wholly inefficient process. But are there any people here who currently already do this, just to avoid the objection, I guess, that would come up in this circumstance? Possibly.
Not really. I mean, when I dealt with it on the back end, we would have salary ranges. And yes, you would say, all right, do you fit in that model? But recently, when I was going through a transition, there wasn't much. It was kind of like 50-50 on seeing if it was available or it wasn't available. And so you kind of had to use your best judgment on going into those positions if it was going to be something that was going to be in your range or not.
Okay. Yeah. I guess for me, it's like you could create a knockout question, I guess, for people who selected that they wanted too much pay. One of the things that has been, so there are a lot of states, as you guys know, where you can't even ask someone what they used to make. You can't ask about their salary history. So, for example, in Massachusetts, you would ask somebody, what are you looking to make versus, well, what did you make at your last company? And it's the same spirit. It's in the same spirit of, well, my last employer discriminated against me and paid me less because I was female or paid me less because I was of a certain race. And so, no, I don't want to tell you what I made for them because they underpaid me for what I was worth. And I'll tell you what I need to make to take this job. Sure. So it's all sort of coming from the same place, trying to solve for the same problem. And that's just something to keep in mind, when you're talking to your supervisors and your managers, that I think sometimes understanding the why behind why we don't ask people what they used to make, they're more likely to remember it and realize, okay, yeah. So we're just going to say, what are you looking What are you looking to make in your next job? And people will disclose it. They'll tell you anyways, unsolicited, they'll tell you, I've found. So other things to take into consideration. So, all right, maybe you were or were not already posting the pay rates, pay ranges online. If you're a multi-state employer, probably need to start doing that unless you're excluding a ton of different states from your posting. And it's usually a good faith pay range. Not all states are exactly the same, but the idea is that you can't say, you can't just say, this position pays somewhere between $50,000 and $200,000 a year, depending on experience. That's obviously ridiculous. And it needs to be what you, in good faith, believe you're likely to offer for that position. And, a lot of this stuff hasn't played out in the courts yet, like it hasn't been litigated yet. So as things will get even better defined for us as people get sued and have to address that. But this is hopefully it could just not be us. That would be great. That would be great if we as employers could all just avoid that, avoid being in the news. Disclose in Colorado. Not only do you disclose for each job opening, in the ad for each job opening, the compensation or range, but you also have to disclose the benefits and any other compensation. So like bonuses, commission, if you're offering an ownership percentage or whatever the offer might entail. And this is to avoid making offers based on, oh yeah, Hank's a good guy. I went to college with Hank. I'm going to give Hank, an extra special offer of like infinite vacation. But, I don't know about this Valerie girl. I'm just going to give her the standard, it's to avoid discrimination again. Is why it's there. I'm not trying to assign a value to it, but in theory, it should help with it to the extent that it's a problem that needs to be solved. Making reasonable efforts to announce, post, or otherwise make known all opportunities for promotion. So you also would need to by no later than the same calendar day that you're making the promotion announcement. And before you make the announcement, you have to let everybody know that there's an opportunity for promotion. So even if you're creating a job, especially for an individual who is the only person qualified to go into that job because you custom made this job just for them, which happens a lot, right? And there's no point in letting people know about it because nobody could apply because nobody else is qualified. You still need to let people know about it prior to announcing it. So that's, an additional burden, additional step there. And in Connecticut, it's a salary range. And it is whether they request it or not. So that's another thing you'll see differ from state to state. In a lot of them, it is whether or not it's requested. And then in some others, it will say upon request. You need to make it available upon request. But again, in Connecticut, whether it's upon hire or changing roles, Connecticut is a special state. I bet you Paula knows this, that you have to pay people weekly in Connecticut. You got to pay people weekly. If you want, even a salaried person, if they don't want to be paid weekly, you have to request an exemption from the state. Isn't that special and amazing? Thankfully, no employees in Connecticut. Poor Connecticut. This we can ignore the slide. I meant to I meant to put the ban the box in terms of, there are a ton of states that will not let you ask about salary history. There's also a ton of states that ban the box for criminal, requesting somebody's background, and that could include their background. Oftentimes with the background, it does include, asking them questions about their credit and things like that, but it's not wholly applicable to this. I would say mostly just the fact that there are so many states where you can't even inquire about their salary history in the hiring process. Now, for the best practices here, I will say that a good starting point, not surprising to anyone on this call, is to audit your existing pay practices. I've seen even at a company with only like 50 or fewer employees, you think, oh yeah, I know like anecdotally that everybody's paid fairly. It's all, it all makes sense. And then you run the report and you look at it on a spreadsheet and you look at the side by sides of their percent bonuses on their offers and their base pay and how long they've been with the company and what their education level is. And, you're trying to see, wait a second, why is this person paid more than this person? Maybe it's performance based. You want to audit those practices and make sure that the reasons that you have, that you can document, are actual legal reasons that you can make that differentiation if people are paid differently. So in some states, to pay people who work the same job or a similar job differently, they'll say, okay, you can use factors such as the number of years of experience or tenure with the company. There are some that will say it's fine to look at education and certifications and things like that to differentiate between people. So, the ideal scenario, and this is one of those where I don't feel like you want to say necessarily, you don't necessarily want to say, okay, we are going to make sure that everybody who has the exact same title doing the exact same thing is making the exact same pay, because there will be legitimate reasons such as performance why you might pay someone more. Some states say it's okay to do it based on performance and some don't. So you just want to look at, as part of your audit, look at all the places where you're currently employing people and have one of the columns on your little spreadsheet, have the criteria for what's an exception that we're allowed to have. And if that includes performance, and you can clearly show and that it's documented that the reason they're making a higher base or the reason they got a bigger bonus was tied to performance, then great. If not, you may need to consider adjusting your pay accordingly to make sure that first it's equal, right? Because you want it to be equal before it's transparent. Even though it's technically required to be transparent now, quite possibly, I would highly recommend that you make sure that everybody's pay is in line, aligned internally and externally before publishing it, unless you want to communicate with the employees that you've identified these things and you're working on it, and by X date you plan on correcting it. But it's a tricky one. I'm trying to anticipate questions you guys probably have because you're not jumping in with the questions, but I will take this opportunity to silence myself for a minute and listen and see if you have specific questions instead of trying to guess what your questions might be. That might be a better approach here.
So we have a kind of an interesting scenario where we have two sets of employees, I guess. we have full-time employees who work for our company, and then we have a set of contractors that's these are financial advisors. So I understand the employee side. For our independent contractors, for the first 9 months that they are, after they're recruited, that they join the company, they are employees, and then they convert to independent contractors. So the question has come up, and it's two totally separate teams, but the questions come up for those that we are hiring into advisor positions into an employee status. We still need to comply with this law. And my guess is the answer to that is yes, regardless of whether or not they convert to independent contractor within a year, has really no bearing on whether or not we have to follow this law. We're hiring them in as employees of our company. So
Right.
would you agree with that?
I agree with that. And then also, if you would like to give me a call after this, there's another problem that is not the topic of this particular call. But if you would like to give me a call, happy to talk to you on that
Okay.
other problem.
And then we also don't, we're recruiting advisors from all over the nation.
Mhm.
So it'd be really difficult to say, okay, well, we're going to post this job, but I mean, we would never discount those states that require pay transparency. I mean, that we would
Yeah.
just be shooting ourselves in the foot. But I just don't know how we would avoid putting it on those particular job postings.
Yeah, so you wouldn't, what you can do, okay, I'm gonna say this disclaimer again, and then maybe one more time before I get off the call. I'm not an attorney and I am not providing legal advice. I'm not qualified to provide legal advice. If you need legal advice, please consult an attorney of competent jurisdiction and appropriate specialization. It's a risk management decision. So again, a lot of this hasn't really been litigated a ton. We haven't seen it played out a ton. And you have to kind of decide for yourself, like, what are the odds that somebody's going to come after us for this? Like, obviously, a lot of other companies are still out of compliance. Do we maybe have a little bit of built-in? Technically, yes, you're supposed to do it and you should do it. It is the law, so you should do it. But I'm sure that the people in leadership positions are going to say, well, what's the likelihood? How much will it cost us if we get, if someone complains and we have to fix it? Is it that, oh, oops, and then we fix it and then that's it? Like, do we wait until we have to do it? These are all the things that typically come up. They want to know what's the worst that could happen. You could be civilly pursued. The owners could be sued and it could be very expensive. Just the legal fees alone could be very expensive. Plus, like, states have fines. So it's not anything that you want to have an employee complain to the state's labor board and have to deal with at all. But I have a feeling that if you encounter any objections, it'll just be those types of questions of, like, how much could this potentially cost and what's the likelihood? Because there are so many companies out of compliance right now. That may or may not be helpful.
Yeah, no, it is. We have a call we're planning to get with our legal counsel here in the next week or so, but it's just, questions are kind of starting to come out of the woodworks. And because those two groups we aren't under the same umbrella, they're sort of working through their own set of issues, and we have from the employee perspective. But yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts about the other issue that you mentioned. So I can definitely give you a call.
Sure. Yeah, happy to help. That was a good one. Yeah. And then there's such a thing as, it sounded almost like you were saying that there might even be like two entities, like two EINs or something, like two separate entities with, this may or may not apply to you, but I've seen companies that share resources, like they share employees across to maybe one employer is leasing, they have common owners, right? own a set of owners, they own multiple companies, multiple EINs, maybe all of this type of employee works out of this company, and then they lease them to the other company in that, they bill the other company for their time or whatever, trying to kind of shift liability to the different entities. So like, for example, you might employ all your California folks out of one entity so that it's confined. It's confined to that company, and only that company has to deal with the employment practices, California Employment Practices Insurance. But with that, when you have that common ownership, usually with stuff like this, with like wage and hour stuff, if somebody is working overtime between the two companies and they're effectively doing the same work for both companies and it's owned by the same people, do you need to pay them overtime? Probably. Do you need to, these are the other things like this. Should you be making pay transparent across the board? That's one that that's a question that hasn't even been addressed yet. I feel like that's one that's going to come out later as these unique scenarios shake out. But my gut, my HR senses are telling me that probably you need to share that information across your organization with similarly situated folks.
Yep.
And in some cases internally, depending on which states you're in, it might just be that you're sharing. It might just be that you're sharing upon request, depending on the states, or it could be that you're just sharing with them the rates of everyone else who's similarly situated, not necessarily like, okay, here's you don't have to, you never, in none of these laws require you to say, this is how much Bob makes, this is how much, Ankil makes. It doesn't require that, although it can be deduced sometimes if you only have one SEO manager and you're saying we pay SEO managers this, but that wouldn't even come up. So I guess what I'm saying is these don't require 100% pay transparency, but they require pay transparency when people are applying to things and when people are up for promotion for things. And so anytime a job is advertised internally or externally, you're going to see what it pays. And so oftentimes people might, if it's a new position and there's only one person going into it, everybody might know what Sarla is going to be making. They might know because she's the only one with that job. And it was, so it's trending towards 100% pay transparency eventually because of factors like that. I think that's where the lawmakers are wanting it to go, if that makes sense. Okay, other questions. I'm talking too much. Oh no, who said just happened today? Is that Paula?
Yeah, it was me.
Did you hire a Connecticut employee today?
No. No, we're actually getting ready to reevaluate our entire salary structure and update it and go through a process with that. And one of the things that we had done is we had kind of looked at everyone that was in a particular role, and we put all their salaries together, all their experience together, and then we kind of got where everybody, landed within there. People in the same roles. And what do you know? A lady with 9 years of experience was making less than a man with less experience. And I'm like, ooh, so
Yeah.
it
Was
just
he a
got,
newer hire?
I'm sorry.
Was he a newer hire?
I don't remember. I didn't look at it that closely because I just got it and then I came over and joined this meeting, but it definitely caught my eye. She's a more tenured employee. Now
Okay.
I'm curious about
Okay.
that. I'm going to go look. But yeah, I mean, it definitely stood out, as a an area that we need to look at. And I guess that's just kind of, it kind of just reaffirms that as an organization, we have to make sure that our salary structures and our salary ranges are kept up to date on an annual basis. There's been a lot of movement in the market, and we felt like we needed to do something mid-year. So we gave everybody that made 120 or less a 2.5% increase. And then they still got merit at the end of the year, on top of that. So we just need to make sure that, it's highly competitive in our market. And so we've got to make sure that we're, staying on the leading edge of, where we want to be with new grads as well as our tenured folks, so just that exercise just revealed that. And I just was like, oh boy, this is
Yeah.
what I thought might happen, which is not a bad thing necessarily. It's just something that we've got to make sure that we watch. I'm going to look and see.
And
So the new employee, the employee that's making more is a newer employee.
yeah, because men are, for the most part, I've seen some pretty shrewd negotiators who are female candidates, but for the most part, still, men are more likely to negotiate than women.
I agree.
On their
Yeah.
pay. And it's more likely to be perceived better and less off-putting.
I agree. Yes.
So
Yep.
so that's how that happens. It's not that guy's fault that he stood up and said, no, man, I'm not coming to work for you unless you pay me X. The employer, one of the ways in which some companies are addressing this is to take negotiations out of the hiring process and to say, and that just I already know that that's not going to work for a lot of people, especially not yet. But a lot of companies, like even if you look at, one of my clients hires people out of MIT a lot, and MIT asks, if you want a booth at MIT, then they want to know, what are you doing to make sure, are you taking pay out of negotiations? Are you auditing your salary? How are you making sure that everybody's paid fairly at your workplace? So they're asking these questions, and they publish that, they make it public to the applicants, so that these people graduating, they don't just want to see who's the most successful company that's going to pay me the most. They want to know, who's an ethical company? Where's a company that you can go to that's going to do things above board and isn't going to pay my friend less than me for the same role? So it's almost like to some
everyone on an even playing ground. It's just, I mean, we sort of kind of did a little bit of that years ago with PTO negotiation, time off negotiation. I'm not old, but I'm older. And in my mind, PTO is something you earn, right? As you work for an employer, you earn more time as you increase your service to them. And I found out real quick, that is not the way a lot of people think. And so we were having a lot of people come in and negotiate PTO time. And so it started to cause some problems. And so we just decided, you know what, we're gonna formulate a policy and a process, and you're not going to negotiate PTO. If you've got 5 years of experience where you came from, then you know what, we're gonna let you come in and earn 160 hours a year. You don't even have to ask for it, because
I like that. Yeah,
we were just finding that some people would ask and some people wouldn't, and then they talk, and then they're like, wait a minute, well, why does Joe have 4 weeks and I only got 3?
Oh, and I'm sure most of you on this call know this, but every once in a while I meet someone who doesn't know it. Under the National Labor Relations Act, employees are free to discuss what they are making with their coworkers They are free to discuss their benefits, pay, working conditions. They are free to complain if they feel that they are not being paid fairly, that they are not being treated fairly, that it's not safe for them. You cannot discipline people for insubordination or disrespect for talking about their pay and their working conditions. That's a federal law that applies to all employers. So yeah, that's something that and if you retaliate against somebody for doing that, your employers are most likely to get sued for retaliation, not even for the discrimination, right? So it's like, even if an employee complains about something that isn't actually illegal, but they thought it was illegal, and then you fire them because that annoyed you, then you get in trouble for retaliation, even though the
Yeah.
original, there wasn't a law violated. So like you did it to yourself at that point. But
Yeah.
good stuff.
It's yeah.
You brought some really good examples, Paula. That I appreciate that.
Oh, you're welcome.
Does anyone else have any questions that I can answer on the call, or any examples that they'd like to share from an anonymous prior employer that they worked for, that they think might be helpful to share with the class? Jason.
I just think it's important to have it up front. I had a prospect call me up that was working on a salary project, and she got promoted from a director of HR to vice president, and management was questioning her salary. And so it's always best practice to make sure you're up to date on knowing what your worth is, and making sure that that is portrayed in a positive light to your employer. Because even with that new promotion, she was like, man, am I being underpaid? And then looking at the demographics and stuff, it opens up a can of worms. So I just think being ahead of the game is where you need to be.
That makes sense. That even makes sense if you wanted to take take everything out of take all negotiations out of the hiring process. Like, it could be really off-putting to say that to somebody if they're at the final round interview, but if you say that to them at the very beginning, like, hey, we want you saw that the job was posted for this, wanted to make sure you're comfortable with this, and also wanted to let you know that as a policy, because we believe in fairness and all of that good stuff, we actually don't negotiate. So, this is what we offer. Is that in line with your expectations? Okay, great. And then that way
Then it's out on the table.
it's on the table, and then they won't be annoyed later. They won't be off put like, oh, they just won't negotiate with me. Like, no, we just don't do it. I can't say the word negotiate without thinking of that scene from Fifth Element where they like send Bruce Willis in to negotiate.
You always send Bruce Willis in.
Yeah. Where did he learn how to negotiate? No. Thank you. Thank you for the feedback on that, Kelly. I really appreciate that. I'm glad I was able to help. And thank you for the emoji, Ashley. I feel like we have a little bit of time left. I didn't get my, my polls and stuff up that I wanted to, poll the audience and kind of see what percentage of you guys were doing what pay transparency wise. I can't send out my slide deck because I also write content for various organizations, and I just don't want to share my content that I'm also dual purposely using, if that makes sense. So
hey, love, so we can't share the recording?
oh, no, we can share the recording. Yes, we can share the
Oh, okay.
recording. But like, I have a bunch of notes and stuff in my slides that are literally just notes from stuff that I've written for other people. And I don't want my notes out there. The slides are fine.
Okay.
The
The
video,
recording is fine.
the recording is fine, sorry. I
Okay.
just like, I write a lot of articles and blogs, and so to like help me with my notes for my own reference, I had just put a bunch of stuff in there.
Okay, I was just making sure, because I was like, I was about to blast this boy. Like, it's okay. To send it to people who, email
Yeah.
and say they can't make it and stuff. Seriously, I wanted to be clear that it's okay to
Yes,
share.
no, this is fine. Like, I don't have anything in the actual slides themselves or anything that I've said that, you know, is content that belongs to anybody else. But in terms of like my own notes on the back end, where I just didn't want to share those.
Okay. Well, you do have a new question from Julia Blair. What
Good one.
resources would you recommend we use to stay up to date on state pay transparency information and other important pay laws and market data? I'm thinking I should just hire you, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's helpful. So this is how I do it. It's a moving target, but I subscribe to a lot of different services. So of course, if you're a SHRM member and you're a member of your local chapter, you're going to get some legal updates. Your payroll provider probably provides some legal updates. Your benefits broker probably provides something like Mineral or one of the other deal sweeteners that provide. So the trick is to subscribe to as many of those as possible. And it's annoying, and there's a lot of emails, and it's hard to stay on top of it, but you will see when the important stuff comes through. They're pretty good about that. And then also, I listen to NPR every single morning, and there's a section, you know, once you get through all the random stuff about, you know, exotic birds and what's in your drinking water, then there's the business section. So in most of the, you know, news outlets, they're going to have something about the business and what's changed, and if there are new laws, then they're going to cover it in that. So I would just say, like, listen to news when you're getting ready in the morning, check your LinkedIn feed, and have a bunch of obnoxious email blasts, and that's kind of what you got to do, because it's changing every single day.
Yeah. Okay. Any more questions, guys? Or anybody want to introduce themselves I didn't get to? Or do you want 8 minutes of your life back?
I mean, I think you should force people to introduce themselves, but I think everyone might want 8 minutes, but it's your show.
Oh, at least drop your LinkedIn tag
Yeah.
link in at the very least. Let's do that so we can connect that way. And then Jason, I'm putting you on the spot again since you
Yes,
ignored my private message. We want you to prepare a talk for 2023 about benefits. Okay?
Yeah, we can definitely work something out. And to my defense, this was way up here, and we were going through a bunch of no's. So I apologize about ignoring you.
I'm just teasing you. You know I like to mess with you.
Yep. No, most definitely. We can definitely talk about that, and I'll put something together for you guys. But also, would love to see some of you guys' faces at the next upcoming luncheon here in a couple weeks. So
Oh,
yeah,
that's
you're registered already. Come see us on the 26th. And then one more shameless plug: a volunteer event on February 9th with Tarrant Area Food Bank. So if anybody wants to come hang out for a couple hours in the morning, would love to see some of your faces there as well.
awesome. And thank you, Jason, as a board member, coming on, sharing your time and your expertise and supporting the PEG. We appreciate you as much. I only tease you because I like you.
Hey, I can take it. So yeah, no worries there.
And it's fun. It's a little
Yes,
fun.
absolutely. And getting to see some members and potential new members. If you have any questions, we're here to help you guys out in any way.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And, okay, now we're taking up their 8 minutes. Kelly, if you want me to, can you email me or LinkedIn me or something me to, if you want the recording once it's ready?
Sure.
Okay, or anybody else too. Sorry about that. Sorry about that. Anyone else, let me know. All right.
Thanks, y'all.
Thanks,
Maybe
guys.
5 minutes back. How about that? Oh,
We'll
no.
take
Okay, wait, one more thing, for
Oh,
real.
you gotta take your photo.
Yes.
Oh, no, yes, okay, yes, oh no,
You
okay.
gotta say, bring your lovely, beautiful faces back. We've gotta take a photo,
Let's be an Ussie.
Ussie selfie thingy. I'm gonna stop the recording at this part though.
I mean, what else could go wrong on the recording at this point? I already messed up so many things.
We're making fun. We're problem solvers. That's okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Ashley, are you able to join us? If not, we totally understand.
We'll put a different photo up. We're
Put
gonna
your
have
bunny
fun with it.
slippers on.
Right. Okay, something fun and crazy because we make HR fun, right? So 1, 2, 3. I think I got it. Wait, come on. Okay, got it. You guys will have some cute pictures on Facebook. I'll tag you all. I mean, LinkedIn. I'm not on Facebook like that. LinkedIn.
It's like getting up close and personal now.
No, we're gonna keep it on LinkedIn. All right, guys,
Good deal.
4 minutes, you get back. Bye.
We'll take it.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
y'all.
Bye.